How much do you get?
That's 105 between the three of us.
It actually fits exactly 35, yes.
Yeah. I said it would be 3 if 3 of us went with me.
I said to my daughter, I need a joke for what's the word for it, because it's a poem, whatnot.
If we win, I'll have you agree.
So my daughter said that her teacher came into classroom today and said, I'll tell you a joke. So, oh, very good, I'll pass it on. Joke is like this. Why is there no, it's not a good joke. Why is there no women's football team?
There is.
That's question number one.
That's why it's like a joke.
So the answer is because how can you have 15 women wearing the same clothes? So I said, as far as I know, there's only 11 people in the team.
Oh, very good.
That's question number 2.
Rugby is 15.
What?
Rugby is 15.
Right, it's a good line.
And the goalkeeper wears differently for some reason.
Okay, so that's what they said. The reason is that with teams, how can you get 15 women to wear the same outfit? It won't work. So that's what. Okay, good point. We have to tell you 3 lines from the bottom. Go shbaka gabos to get our teeth into. I hope we manage. Is it 20? Oh, it's 22 literally. Oh, was chus. Not shikah yet. Susan Makdimim. No, not my son called it for me. She was not shikah yet. It's fasting, yes, hello. Bought 2 bottles of wine. He got £2 of wine for £6 each, cheapest he could get. I said he's planning to get shikah tonight and tomorrow. Luckily, I'm not allowed to see it. But then have not that age. But okay, no, you just not that age. Not 14, 15. Did you get shikah 15?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
No, maybe it's steiging though. We're up to Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph 3 lines from the bottom. The mitzvah of Yitzhak Mitzrayim was to either come Pesach b'chipozim, but once the rest of the time there's no mitzvah b'chipozim. For example, nowadays the mitzvah to come Pesach b'chipozim. You don't have to wear your shoes or tie on your belt or eat it with your sticks in your hands as if you're about to go on a journey. The mitzvah b'chipozim is only said by Yitzhak Mitzrayim. How do we know that? Minaron. Very straightforward. You shall eat it. Only it, not any other commands. The Mishnah says that Pesach Mitzrayim lasted for 1 day, and the rest of Pesach lasts for 7 days, which is very difficult to understand. Which mitzvah we're talking about? The mitzvah of eating Pesach is only 1 day. The more asks, and the more eventually gets. What's the Mishnah talking about? In Pesach, Pesach, Pesach calls Shiva Meika. Do we eat Pesach all 7 days? There's such thing. So maybe we talk about the mitzvah of chometz, but that's also not true. Because our Mishnah says that Pesach Mitzrayim was only for 1 night. Now, the Pesach that came out of Mitzrayim, they didn't eat chometz in the morning either. They were not allowed to eat chometz the entire 1 day. It says, only 1 night. They applied to the entire first day, not just the first night. It says, don't eat chometz. Today you're going out to Mitzrayim. The 2 things together to teach you that what? That the mitzvah of not eating, that you're not allowed to eat chometz for the entire first day that it came out of Mitzrayim. The Mishnah is saying 2 completely separate statements. Laila echad, that wuhad in the Pesach Teres, the mitzvah of eating korban Pesach is for 1 night, and so too all korbanos Pesach you eat it for 1 night. V'chimutze kol hayom Pesach Teres they call shiva. So the Mishnah is saying 2 different halachas. One halach Mishnah is telling us is that what? That Pesach Mitzrayim, you ate it for 1 night, and every Pesach you eat for 1 night. The second halach is Gabi Chometz. Pesach Mitzrayim was for how long were they not allowed to eat Chometz? Only 1 day, but a whole day, not just a night. Pesach Teres is for all 7 days. Right, now we're going into a bit of a new topic. We have to get clear. There are 4 different kinds of Pesach we're going to be discussing a little bit. Let's get it very clear. It means there's a mitzvah between korban Pesach, right? We'll call that the korban Pesach, right? Let's say you lose it. Let's say I makdish this is korban Pesach, and it gets lost. It runs away. So what do? I find a replacement Pesach. That's the second kind, right? Replacement Pesach. Now, if I only shecht one of them, the other has been rejected, right? So that it's called a rejected korban Pesach. Clear? Rejected korban Pesach. Now, think about it. You should be able to shout out the answer. If I only find it after I shechted the one which I had, is it a true rejection? I know we're fasting and everything else. Again, I find a korban Pesach. I make a korban Pesach. This is my korban Pesach. I lose it. I get a replacement. And then I find both. And I shecht one, not the other. The other one becomes rejected. But if I never found it and I shecht one, the other one is not rejected. Why is it not considered rejected? Because I didn't find it at the time that it should be considered rejected. It was gone, it was lost. It wasn't considered rejected.
Why did you find after them? Just nothing.
Oh,
Couldn't.
that's a very good question. Why did you find? Then you've got a din called Moisa HaPesach. Moisa HaPesach is a common Pesach which is left over because you didn't need it. Let's say, for example, you got lost.
That's within the common Pesach, not with a separate common.
They're both colours.
We'll go to learn the halachas for all of these. Again, you've got, no, that's Noisa, and there's Moisa Pesach, left over common Pesach. It's quite confusing. It is. So again, you've got the common Pesach, you've got the replacement common Pesach, one gets lost. You've got the rejected common Pesach, where you shechted one, and you didn't shech the other. And then you've got what's called the Moisa common Pesach, where you've got common Pesach which was spare. And finally, on all of these, it is possible to do t'mur. T'mur is like this. If I've got a korban, it's an oil or shtomim, I take another animal and I'm saying this should be like this, then the halacha is, this is called t'mur. The halacha of t'mur is that both are kaddish. And there are certain halachas to the t'mur. I think we're now going to discuss what's the halachas to all these. Says the Mishnah, Omar Yisroel, Shomati, I heard, t'mur as Pesach kreva, that the t'mur of Pesach is brought as a korban, the t'mur as Pesach ain't no kreva, it's not brought as a korban. That means he heard two contradictory statements and he does not know the any fash. I cannot explain it. I cannot reconcile it. I'll reconcile it. Let's explain it. A Pesach shenim so kodesh chitas a Pesach. You actually stoy v'imoche v'yavi v'domos shlom. V'chein t'muose. Achas chitas a Pesach kov shlom v'chein t'muose. Let's get it very, very clear. Erev Pesach, it's very shortly, we'll be bringing Korban Pesach. So we'll have Korban Pesach A. No, let's see if it helps this. Right, one sheep. This is my sheep. I separated it as a Korban Pesach. Right, can you see it? This is the Korban Pesach. I lost it. It ran away. Sheep run. So I made myself a replacement. Then it came Erev Pesach afternoon, and I managed to find both. So then I shecht. I said this one. I chose to shecht this one. This one, what's it? What would you call this one? It's also Kaddish, but what's its status now? It's a rejected Korban Pesach. It's a rejected Korban Pesach. Why is it rejected Korban Pesach? Because I could have shechted it and I didn't. Yeah. So then what happens is, if I now do t'mura to it, both of them are rejected korbanos. Rejected korbanos are not bought as a shlomim. What should you do with them? You let them graze till they get a mum, then you sell them, and with the money you buy yourself a shlomim. You buy yourself an oila which you bought in the Mizbeach when the Mizbeach is bought. Again, I chose this one, and then I lost it, so I took this one, and now I have both, and I only shechted one. The other one becomes rejected. So now this one is called a rejected Korban Pesach. I did t'mur to rejected Korban Pesach. Both of them cannot be bought as a shlomim. Both of them are bought as a Korban oila after they get a mum. But if, let's say, a very similar story, but with one tiny difference, and that is that I only found them later. That means I chose this as a Korban Pesach. I lost it. I found another one. I chose another one. Came to Erev Pesach. I couldn't find this one. It was still lost. So I shechted this one. And then after I finished shechting it, then I find this one. What's its status? Can you call it rejected? No, because it was lost at the time. I didn't have a choice. So what is its din? It's called the Moisa Pesach. Moisa Pesach is called the Shlomim. And now I do t'mur to it. Both of them are Shlomim. So again, both are bought as Shlomim. Yes, both are bought as common Shlomim. So there's a difference between the rejected Korban Pesach and the Korban Pesach which is a spare.
What does the Mishnah call the rejected? What's the Lashon?
No, the Mishnah doesn't say. Let's say Omar Be'Akiva a Pesach shenimtza. You found it. Kodem shchitas a Pesach. You actually you have to make it graze until it gets about momi mochi v'amdam v'shlomim. V'chetimose. Achas shchitas a Pesach kol shom v'chetimose. Now, this halacha that there's a difference between when you shechted it before you found it, where it's not rejected, or after you found it, which is rejected, applies equally to the t'mura and to the korban itself, which leads the Gemara immediately to ask, V'leima Pesach korban Pesach in a korban. The difference is not just in the t'mura, the difference is also true in the original korban. Let's get it very clear. Again, I chose this as a korban. I lost it. I took this as a replacement. Then I find both. So I decide to use the replacement, let's say. So now this one is rejected, and so is it more rejected. Or I choose Korban Pesach, I lose it. I choose another one. I only find the first one after I finish shechting it. It's not rejected, so both of them are bought as shlomim. So why is the Mishnah talking about the Tamur? Why not talk about the original Korban? Answer is, well, this is a tricky point of Rashi is like this. It's like this. You might have thought that if I choose, I've got two in front of me, and I choose to shecht one, then that rejects the other. But the Tamur should not be rejected. Why should the Tamur not be rejected? Because regarding the Tamur, since it's a much weaker Kedusha, you might say that the Tamur should automatically become a Shlomim. Because it was never originally meant to be a Korban Pesach. You're not allowed to bring a Tamur as a Korban Pesach. So therefore, the Tamur should never be considered rejected, and therefore it should be considered the Moisa Pesach and brought Shlomim. Even a bigger Chiddush, that even a Tamur as a Pesach, if it's a Tamur of a Korban that's rejected, is also no good. Says it's. Now, the question is like this. We said that if you find it when you still had the option to shecht it, and then you didn't shecht it, then it's no good. What's it in? What do you do with it? Graze until eventually it becomes a mum, said become a mum. If you found it only after, it's a shlomim. The question is it dependent on the time that you shechted the Korban Pesach? That means if let's say I find it 2:30 and I shechted 2:45, so then I rejected it. Or is it to do it, did I find it before Chatzos or after Chatzos? Meaning, did I find it before the time which was possible to become Pesach or after?
So not what I'm choosing. When you have a choice of which one.
That's right. That's right. That's the Shiloh. So the word says like this, is it to do with the time? Right? Is it to do with the time when you find it? Or is it to do, that means, is it to do with Chatzos, before Chatzos, after Chatzos? Or is it to do before you shecht it or after you shechted it? It's machlokes amorim and machlokes tanoim. Itma. The difference depends if you find it before shchita or after shchita. It says in the Mishnah clearly before you shecht it. Before the time of shechting the Pesach. Let it graze. Because you rejected it because you never shecht it. But if you find it only after shchita, let it graze. So we've got machlokes amorim and machlokes tanoim, and I can see maybe this is what's bothering Tony, that Slach has got bigger arichos. That the whole svov here is a rejection. The rejection can only be if you found it before you shecht it. If you found it before Chatzos, after Chatzos, why is that a rejection? It's nothing to do with it. The Tzlach says because there's a rejection from the Torah. The Torah rejects it that you found it before Chatzos, and now you had a time whether you've got two in front of you, and therefore, I said the others will leave it as a kasha. What's the small observe? Let's get clear, at least the halacha, so later we're going to go back to it. Again, if you've got two Korban Pesach in front of you, how can you have two? Why would you have two? You lost one, chose another, and then you found the original. So you've got two. What happens to the second one? What's the din? Depends on when you found it. If you found it before Shechita, before Chatzos, it's considered a rejected Korban Pesach. You have to let it graze until it gets a mum and then buy with it an oila. If you found it after you shechted or after Chatzos, then you didn't reject it. So there becomes what? Shlomim. So what do you do with it? A normal shlomim. Says now here there's two stages. There's when you found it and when you did tamur to it. Because we said the halacha of the korban then continues on to the tamur. Now the Gemara says, let's discuss at which stage was the tamur. So it says, Rabbi, something goes Rabbi. If you found it before shchita, but you did the tamur after shchita, since the tamur is on a korban which has already been rejected, so the tamur as well has got a rejection, and therefore the tamur itself is not a shlomim, but rather what is it? A korban which you have to let it graze until it becomes bamul. Below korban. Im kesef. Rashi's got a big shaila. Which word over here is spare? Either the word im, if kesef. The Torah could have said kesef if you bring a kesef. Or Rashi says interestingly that maybe the word sheep is spare. Why? The Torah there is talking about the halachas of korban shlomim or korban oila. So we're talking about different kinds of oilos that you can bring. And what happens is the Torah says cow, goat. Now the next one, what is it going to be? Must be a sheep. So for the Torah, you need to use the word sheep. So either the word im is spare, if you could have said kesef, or the word sheep alone is spare, because you could just say that automatically we must be talking about sheep. So what do we learn from this spare word? That towards a Pesach is brought as a shlom. Hey Chitami, which kind of towards a Pesach is brought as shlom? They only found the original after shchita. and you did Tamur after Shechita, Pshita, of course, that it becomes a Shlomim. Why? It was never rejected. So therefore, it is a Shlomim. So the Tamur is a Shlomim. So of course, it's still a Shlomim. So Lomali Kvo, and Lav Shedimsa Kedim Shechita, remember Shechita. The Chiddush is we're talking about where you found it before Shechita. And therefore, it was a bit rejected. But since the Tamur was done after Shechita, it's considered not rejected. Look, we're talking about what was found after Shechita, and the Tamur was after Shechita, so it's all rejected. So therefore, therefore it's not rejected. You found the korban after Shechita, and the Tamur was after Shechita, and therefore it's not rejected. So therefore, it should be a korban Shlomim. The pasuk is spare and it's not teaching you this. It says, "Wait, the pasuk spare so what is the pasuk to teach you?" One of the fascinating things about Korban Pesach is it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah what to do with the emurim of the Korban Pesach. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah. How do I know Rashi says so? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah. So therefore we know it because the Torah says a general statement that blood should be put on the Mizbeach and sacrifices should be burnt. So from there we learn that the sacrifice Korban Pesach should be burnt. Now the problem is, what about the tail? Does anybody know what happens to the tail of Korban Pesach? You have to burn it, only if it's a sheep, not a goat. Does anybody remember somebody that asked for the tail and then guy got killed? The goy, he came back to Rabbi Yehuda and he said to him, he couldn't go, very good. So he said to him, I eat Korban Pesach every year and nobody makes any fuss. What did he say to him? Ask the tail and had him killed. So now, the Pasuk here is teaching us that if you bring a Korban Pesach as a goat, do you have to put the tail on the Mizbeach? No. If you bring it as a sheep, you have to put it. Now, how do we know that from the words im kesef? Let's say you designated the Korban Pesach, and the halachas Korban Pesach has to be up to 1 year old. And by the time you designated that today, and you found out the time it comes to Pesach, that what is it? It's over a year old. What will you do with it? Kol v'shlomim. V'shlomim abon machlas Pesach l'chol mitzvahs shlomim. So therefore, it's got all the mitzvahs of shlomim. What are the mitzvahs? Sheton smicha u'nesachim v'tnu v'tzchaze v'shoik. 3 halachas. You have to lean on it. Korban Pesach, you don't lean. Shlomim, you do. So Moisa Pesach is a shlomim. So what do you have to do? You have to lean on it. On the sachim, you have to pay for the sachim, which you don't have to pay by Korban Pesach. You have to weigh the chazav v'shoik, and then the kohen eats it, not the owners. By Korban Pesach, the owners eat it. By Moisa Pesach and Pesach she'avos shnosoi, the kohen eats it and he has to weigh it. It tells you that a goat of a Korban Pesach does not have to bring a tail. Some in the same statement of Rava, that it depends when you did it. When the Tamur happened is on the Reisha, not on the Sefer. And in fact, it comes out that Rava is arguing. It's a different version which doesn't agree with the first version. If you found it before, and therefore you rejected it because you shechted the other one, wait for it to get a month, sell it and buy a shlomim. And then so to the Tamur. Says the Gemara, when you found it, did it Tamur before Shechita? If you only did the Tamur after Shechita, even though the actual original one was rejected, the Tamur is brought as a Shlomim. This is a very interesting halacha. Let's go very slowly if we can. I choose A as a Korban Pesach. I lose it. Choose B. And then I found A. So what I did was I chose to shecht one of them. What's the status of the other, according to everybody? Rejected, and what do you do with it? Now, I only did Tamura, though, to the rejected one after I shechted the other one. Says Rava, in such a case, the Tamura of the rejected one gets the Kedusha of a real Shlomim. Why? Because by the time I got around to doing Tamura, it was no longer rejected, because by then I had no choice but to shecht one. There was only one left. So therefore, it's not considered rejected. A bit. The Beis will slug this up eventually. When you established it, when you established it, you established it as something which is fitting. There was nothing not fitting anymore. This is the same brisa, but now we're going to bring the whole brisa. The Rabbi was a Pesach Shlomim. The Tamur of Pesach after Pesach is brought as a Shlomim. Yochid, top of Alexander Mudalev, Yochid after the Pesach came, Talmud Loima, who? Pasuk says, who it's a miyut, who called me Tamur of Pesach Kveva. Now, what is this who coming to reject? If we talk about where everything happened before you shechted, that means you found the Korban Pesach, you found the spare. and you did more to the spare. And the chiddush is that you can't bring it as a Korban Pesach. Pshita, lomali kro. Of course you don't need a pasuk. Why do you need a pasuk? Because it's all rejected. So of course you can't bring it as a shlomim. And nevertheless, it is rejected, and you can't bring it. Yuvta, the Rabbi to Yuvta. It's a to Yuvta, Mova to Yuvta. Tais asks a few questions. One question Tais asks is, why does one not just say like before, that's a smachta? It says Tais because the Gemara did not know what to do with the word who. Before the Gemara said smachta because we had something else to do with it from Kesef. Here the Gemara didn't have what to do with it, so for the Gemara was forced to say that it's a Yuvta. Furthermore, Tais asks the kasha that since this version is proven wrong, so that proves that the first version is correct, because the two versions are opposite. And Rabbi asked for the first version, and then from the second version proves that the first version is right. He says he can't understand how Rabbi could have done such a thing. Why did Rabbi bring the whole Beis originally and then prove like the first version to be correct? Okay. The more is going to a new topic, a topic which relates to this a very lot. The halacha is there are 5 chatois that we have to die. I know people get very upset about this. We lock them up until they starve to death. What are the 5? There are 5 chatois you can't bring them. Blood chatos. That means, let's say I take this as a sheep. I did an aver by mistake. What aver would I bring a chatos for? Shabbos. I by mistake lit a candle on Shabbos thinking that it's Sunday. I have to bring a chatos. I choose this as a chatos. A chatos is male or female? Female, very good. It has a baby. That baby, we starve it to death. Tmuas chatos. If I do tmuah to a chatos, which we talked about till now, a chatos when meisu baleh, if I die after I separate it as a chatos, before I have a chance to I separate it as a chatos, and then I die. Why can't my son bring it, by the way? He's not mechuyev, and I'm dead, so I can't do kapor on me anymore. Right, you've got 2 more. What are the 2? Rashi mentions them. If I already had a kapor, niskapu baleo. That means I lost it, I found the replacement, I bought the replacement, and then I found the original. So I can't bring it. Why can't I bring it? I already had a kapor, you can't bring it as a double. And finally, if it's too old.
Well, after you brought it?
No, I designated, and then it became too old, I can't bring it. All these 5, in theory, could apply to Korban Pesach except for one. And whoever gets it right would deserve a cup of hot water, except for the fact that now Kart is fasting. What is the thing that cannot apply to Korban Pesach? Very good. Why not? Because it has to be male. You deserve a drink of hot water. Seriously, no. Says the Gemara. Very good. Again, these 5, if you ever want to remember, the Rosh Tivus is Vatimna. Vatimna is the Pelegesh. Vav is blood, Tov is Tmor, Men is Mesu, Nun is Niskapu, Ein is Ovosh Losa. Vatimna is the Pelegesh. It's a Pelegesh. It's no good. We let them die. Now, says Shmuel, this is a very Omar Shmuel. Kol Shebechatos Mesa. Anytime a Chatos Mesa, which was the 5 we just spoke about, the Pesach Kol Shlomim, bringing it to Shlomim. Kol Shebechatos Voya, which more later will explain when do we let it graze. The Pesach Dami Voya. Rabbi Yehuda Omayna Pesach Kol Shlomim Shneimsach HaShchita V'Kedem Shchita Loi. The Gemara later will explain what Rabbi Yehuda means. At this stage, the Gemara is baffled by what Rabbi Yehuda means. So the Gemara says so far what we do understand. Whenever you say Chatos die, what do you do with the Korban Pesach? Shlomim. Very good. Master Rabbi Yosef Chalu, is that true? That you let it graze. If a chatos would be literally inside a base of kavos, how would the kohen get it? Never get it. It would literally have to graze and graze and graze until eventually gets a mum, and somebody else would use it. So what Tesa says, it's a very strange way of explaining something. You could have just say, let it graze. Tesa says, because I want to tell you that it's not a sul in the korban, it's just that you can't use it. Okay, I'm speaking a bit fast. Again, a chatos which the year became too old. Says the Mishnah, the Vaisa, that what do you do with it? Let it graze. Now, you should ask me straight away, wait a second, the second guy I told you, Ovosh so let it die. The Gemara asks this kasha into more, and the Gemara answers that this Mishnah which says let it die is when it had 2 things wrong. Aleph was Ovosh Nosa, and basic got lost. So when you've got the 2 things wrong, you let it die. But if you only have one of the 2, then you let it graze. Again, so this is we're talking about something we should let it graze. So again, Pesach Chatas Ovosh Nosa, let it graze. Now, what would the din be by calling Pesach Ovosh Nosa? If it's called Moisa Shlomim, Moisa Pesach is called Shlomim. And according to Shmuel's principle, let's memorize Shmuel's principle, let's write it on our fridge if there's still space. Chatos Shemesu Ba'aleo is brought as a Shlomim. Chatos Shevoyo Pesach Nabi. If it's not true, that statement is inherently not true. Why? Says the Gemara again. to include a tail. Im Kesef Rabbi said Pesach she'avo shnosei. V'shlomi avoid machos Pesach. V'chol mitzvah shlomi shtun esmicha like we mentioned before in the Pesachim and the first Chazal Shuk. Kishim mem ezif tzekayim lamadalei shenutun aliyah. We had the before Shabbos that Pesach she'avo shnosa is not voya, it's a shlomim. How can you say ba'achat she'avo shnosa? It's voya. Here we say it's a shlomim. Answers the Gemara. The Gemara, what the Gemara does is cuts down shmur completely. We said before 5 chatois on Mesa, 5 psachim, except for one that's Ben put out, one moment exists. So 4 psachim will be shlomim. Says the Gemara, no. 1 chatos Mesa, 1 Pesach will be a shlomim. He was only referring to a common Pesach that got lost, chatos which got lost. The other cases he wasn't talking about, he meant that a chatos which dies because it got lost, i.e., I took a chatos, I lost it. I took another one as a chatos, and then I find it. I can't bring it as a nedava. Chatos doesn't come in as a nedava. I can't bring it as an avera. I haven't done any averas because I've already got kapor for the other one. So what do I do with it? I let it starve to death. Back on Pesach, it would be shlomim. Says the Gemara. That's all Shmuel meant. Nothing more, nothing less. But with the big statement, we said 5 and everything else. We've limited it now to a lost chatos. Says by lost it also doesn't work. Why? Again, when you lose a chatos and you separate another one and then you find the original, what exactly is the din? You separate a chatos, you got lost. You separated another one in its stead. And then you found the first one. Now you've got 2 in front of you. What should you do? Rabbi says, 1 dies, 1 brings a chatos. The Chachamim say, when does it die? Only if you found it after kapor. Here, it doesn't die. The reason is, when does it die? It was with complete kapor, but here it doesn't die. Why doesn't it die? Because at the end of the day, why doesn't it die? Because at the end of the day, there was an opportunity to bring it as a chatos. Because I had the 2 in front of me and I could have chosen one or the other. So therefore, it's not considered a chatos shel iskapu ba'aleh. So the Gemara says he said before that when it gets lost, the halacha is that it dies, but it's not true because according to the Chachamim, it doesn't die, it rather goes to grace. So now you say, okay, maybe by Pesach we'll talk about the same case. Again, the similar case back on Pesach would be a shlomim, not a roya. Again, Shmuel said like this: whenever by chatos it dies, by Pesach it would be shlomim. By Pesach, by chatos it's roya. By Pesach it is roya as well. Says the Gemara, that's not true. According to the Chachamim, by chatos, when does it die? It only dies if you found it afterwards. And in such a case, by Pesach, it's a shlomim, which is the opposite of what Shmuel said. And when by chatos do we say roya? When you find it earlier. And in such a case, by Pesach, it is rejected. So there, that would work, but the other one, it wouldn't work. But Pesach, says, well, Shmuel can be svile. Shmuel like Rabbi, the Oma Avuda lemisas lo. Says, well, Kola Avuda le Rabbi Mesa. According to Rabbi, everyone that gets lost is Mesa. According to Rabbi, we just said that every chatos that gets lost, regardless, when you find it, you always have to starve it to death. But yet by chatos, we say what? By chatos, what do we say? Sorry, by Pesach. By chatos, it's always Mesa. By Kohen Pesach, what do we say? According to, it depends. If it's before chatos, it's Svoy. After chatos, it's Lav Avodu. It says the Gemara Kedavova. Rabbi says like this: that if you lose a common chatos at night and you only find the next morning, it doesn't have any of the rules of common chatos getting lost. Why? That's not really getting lost. Getting lost is when you had the proper opportunity to look for it. He didn't have a proper opportunity to look for it, so that's not considered lost. Says the Gemara the same thing, that in such a case, if you would lose a chatos, even though Rabbi says whenever you lose a chatos, regardless of when you find it, you always have the principle that what? What does Rabbi hold? Whenever we lose a chatos, whenever you find it, doesn't matter when you find it, what's the halacha? It dies. Mashain Kain, by night, Rabbi agrees it goes to grazing. Says the Gemara, where's it going to find out? It says the Gemara, Rashi explains it, at night it's not considered properly lost because it's not, because that's not real loss. During the day, he holds it's always Mesa. And says the Gemara, when would you have a case of proper grazing which is considered lost? Thomas Alexander would base. What happens if a person's a bit nervous? So he's scared, he wants to be a Kohen Chatos. So he separates two Koponos Chatos, both as a Chatos. Meaning not because he lost any, simply because in case one of them doesn't work out, he picks them both to Yerushalayim, maybe one more down the way, etc. So then the halach is Miskapeh Bachas when the Shiur to says the Gemara, Pesach, Ke'agav the Kol Shlomim. But that also doesn't work because Shmuel made the comparison between Pesach and Chatos. But by Chatos in such a case, indeed you're right that it's Voya, but by Chatos it's Voya, but by Pesach it's a Shlomim. And Shmuel comes Shimon Svilei Dama Chomesh Chatos Beisos. He holds the Zos Hashem is a cloud. He never holds it. Indeed, now we're limiting what Shmuel said like this. All Shmuel meant to say like this. The whole chiddush of Rabbi Shmuel was only to reject Rabbi Yochanan. That what? If you remember earlier when Machlokes Rabba and Rabbi is it depend on shchita or depend on chatzos? Shmuel held like that depends on chatzos, not like Rabbi Yochanan who held it depends on chatzos, and that's all Shmuel was coming to tell us. Lish la'achrina, ve'ilu bePesach echet ovad nusach chatzos kodem shchita yikol v'shlamim. All Shmuel wanted to teach us was that if you find it before chatzos, before shchita is being shlamim, Shmuel klabus v'leid about shchita kova. The ikka is when you shecht it. Says Bob, we come up, you can learn a Pesach of Shlomo Nishim Sacha Shchita. Aber koidem Shchita loy, am Shchita kova b'chad Shmuel savachat so is kova. Rabbi Yochanan immediately follows Shmuel's words, and he says that what is the establishing factor? Is the establishing factor Shchita, not chatzis. And Shmuel kvevi svilei dama avoda lemisa oslo. He holds it goes lemisa and not levi'iyah, and therefore Shmuel is coming to tell us that Korban Pesach is like chatos, that it goes lemisa, but by chatos lemisa, by Korban Pesach levi'iyah. Says, well, Kol Avud and Rebbe Mason, all of them are Masons. So when do you have a rear? Well, Pesach, Echetovad, Keduchatzis, and Keduchatzis, Voya. Keduchatzis, Lab, Ovadu, because of Keduchatzis, Kova. That means, according to Shmuel, the Ikke the Kuda is the Chatzis Kaveh, not the Shchita. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the Ikke is the Shchita. And that the Gemara sticks to both versions of the Gemara, both versions of Shmuel. The whole nafkamina between the Gemara is like this. According to Shmuel, the first version, Shmuel holds like the Chacham. According to the second version, he holds like Rabbi. I'll summarize the Gemara. I'm going to stop here. I said it quite fast. It is a more complicated Gemara, perhaps, thing, and also more faster than everything else. I'm not actually sure this spoil. Tell you each thing is that there's a YouTube. I've got a daughter that likes to help herself to nash from the cupboard all the time.
Yeah, we all
I know, but she doesn't think. Anyway, she's fasting for the first time this
It's more
time.
enjoyable when it's.
So what happens is today she didn't help herself to nash from the cupboard, because she's so proud of the fact that she's fasting. So it's interesting that she could do it without us noticing. She doesn't, because it's a more difficult thing. We could have all had a trick this afternoon. Self-control that Christ all have. I want to summarize what we've learned. Right, like this. Moisa Pesach is bought Shlomim, and it's got main three nafkiminas. What are the three main nafkiminas that you need to be Chazei v'Shoig, the Sochim, and Smicha? That is Moisa Pesach. The Tmuras Pesach, it depends which Tmur is it. A Tmur of a normal Pesach or a Tmur of a Pesach which has been rejected. We pass it, by the way, like Rabbi, that has nothing to do with Chatzos, it's to do with Shchita. So if you find it before Shchita and you only shecht one, what's the din? And you only shecht one, then the other one's rejected, and therefore you have to graze it. And so to the Tmur of that. That's how we pass it. And we pass it like Rabbi, we pass it the first version of Rabbi, that it makes no difference, even if, for example, if you reject it, and then afterwards you do Tzmura, it's got the halacha as if it was rejected straight away, and the Tzmura, even though later it's only one left, is considered like a Tzmura rejected. Okay, I wish every day I'm we're up to date, Baruch Hashem. We're starting Motzei Shabbos, 8 o'clock from the Mishnah.
8 o'clock again.
It's 8 o'clock, yes. Very good.